Hey there, welcome to our May 2025 National Virtual Gathering. Today, I have invited our guest speaker into my kitchen, and she's going to be going over lacto-fermentation. She has a small presentation to go over, and then we're actually going to get cooking today. So I'm really excited to have her join us, and please bear with us. This is something I've never done yet as the media director, as far as having so many moving pieces in a national virtual gathering. But, we're all along for the ride. We like to keep it rustic here at National Ladies Homestead Gathering, and I am so glad that you're here. We host the National Virtual Gathering live on the first Wednesday of every month, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We have a different topic every month, and I'm just so glad you're here. We have 23 chapters across the United States, and I would like to officially welcome two of our newest chapters. We have South McIntosh, Oklahoma, and Walton County, Georgia. Our purpose at National Ladies Homestead Gathering is to empower women through homesteading, and our mission is to share knowledge, build community, and grow friendships. I just want to say last month in April was our VIP appreciation month. We had some drawings and some amazing winners, and I just really want to extend a heartfelt thanks from the whole NLHG board and executive team and all of the local chapters executive teams to all of you who have renewed your VIP membership for the next year and continue to support us. So with that being said, I just want to go over a couple rules. Tawny is going to go ahead and do her presentation. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat, and then I will moderate a Q&A towards the end of the conversation. And with that, I'd like to welcome Tawny Leger, the Mountain Mama.
Hi, Nancy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Tawny the Mountain Mama, and I'm just a natural-minded enthusiast that read too many labels, and so I started making all of my own things. I am the ingredients household that everyone jokes about, and so my husband and I were fortunate enough to be on 10 acres, and we try to grow, preserve, harvest, and hunt as much as we possibly can so that we can really be just a little bit more independent. And so one of the ways that we preserve our food is through lacto-fermentation. So I'm excited to share some of that today.
Well, I'm excited. It's just been great to get to know you over the past couple of years and kind of just watch you in your homesteading journey too. So welcome to the NLHG community, and I will let you get started.
Thanks. All right, so we're going to shift over to our slides.
Okay, let me share your presentation. Oops. Okay.
Awesome. So chatting about lacto-fermentation, go ahead and hit the next slide. So if you are new to fermentation or sauerkraut and the whole world of all this, it's really simple. At its simplest form, lacto-fermentation is really just vegetables and salt and maybe a little water and giving it some time. At a more complex level, lacto-fermentation is the traditional, natural, and anaerobic, that means oxygen-free food preservation process that uses lactobacillus bacteria, which is a good bacteria to convert starches and sugars into food into lactic acid. So lacto-fermentation actually has nothing to do with lactose. So that is one of the misnomers. People think that it has to do with dairy. You can actually use whey in your veggie ferments, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about lactobacillus. This process is actually going to create a tangy, acidic environment that's going to inhibit the harmful bacteria so that we can just grow those good probiotic, those good bacteria. It's also going to enhance the flavor, the shelf life, and the nutritional value of your vegetables. One of the wild things about fermentation is it actually helps to make the vitamins that are in your in your vegetables more bioavailable. So it will increase the nutritional value of your food. So if you're already eating vegetables, if you can get them fermented, get some more good bacteria on them, they become like a probiotic, and you're going to have more bioavailable vitamins from that food that are already there. They're just better prepared for your body's consumption. All right, so I want to talk about a case for eating fermented foods. There are so many benefits for eating fermented foods, but one of them is talking about your overall health. So in recent years, there's been a lot more exposure and knowledge about the gut and mind, or sorry, your gut and brain axis. So the relationship between your gut health and your brain health, that's becoming more and more chatted about. And there's a lot more studies that show the better gut health you can have, the more overall health you'll have, both in mental health, mental wellness, mental health, but then also your ability to fight off germs and your body's overall health. So 90% of your serotonin, which is one of your feel-good hormones, is actually produced in your gut. A lot of people don't know that. And so fermented foods help by feeding and strengthening that good bacteria that's going to support your serotonin production. And when your gut is inflamed, imbalanced, and lacking beneficial bacteria, it will directly impact your mood, anxiety levels, mental clarity. And so this is by no means any health advice, but maybe if you feel like your mood, anxiety, and mental clarity need a little loving, maybe start with some sauerkraut. So going on to our next, just what's happening behind the scenes when we ferment our vegetables. Fresh vegetables are bringing in natural bacteria. Like there's good and bad bacteria on our vegetables. And the salt will actually pull the water from those and create a protective brine. The salt is going to help keep the vegetables firm and slow the spoilage and allow all that good bacteria to take over and kill out all of the bad bacteria. In the fermentation process, vegetables are going to be submerged under a brine. One of the golden rules about fermentation is under the brine, everything will be fine. So if any of your vegetables come above that brine liquid level, then there can be spoilage, it can get rotten, it can get moldy. And so you want to make sure when you're fermenting, all of your vegetables stay below the water line, the liquid line of the brine. Beneficial bacteria is going to then consume the sugars, and it's going to produce lactic acid and carbon dioxide. So the lactic acid is going to help preserve and protect, and the carbon dioxide, you'll see that's just showing that there is an active ferment. If you don't see any bubbles, that means there's not enough good bacteria that's thriving and it's not fermenting well.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. And a lot of questions I get asked between, there's canning, there's pickling, there's fermenting. And so we're just going to chat a little bit about the difference between pickling and fermenting. But I do have to say, canning, pickling, fermenting, they all have a place in my kitchen. I do them all. But there's different pros and cons to each of them. So when it comes to just pickling, that's going to be a quick vinegar-based preservation. There's going to be no live bacteria, no probiotics. It's a relatively fast process, and it's ready in a few hours or a few days. The flavor is really going to come from your vinegar and your spices, not wild bacteria growing. It's very shelf stable when sealed. So if you pickle and then can it, it's very shelf stable. It can live there for like 18 months and do fine. And it's great for flavor and for long-term storage, but it really doesn't do anything to help support your gut health. And it also is going to, all of the vitamins are going to decrease whenever you're just pickling or just canning versus increase like fermenting. So lacto-fermentation, it's a lot slower. It's a living food, or the process of making it is slower. The shelf life is actually shorter. So that is something to keep in mind when lacto-fermenting. But instead of using vinegar as our preservation method, we're going to use salt and natural bacteria that exist on the vegetables. It's going to create your live probiotics, which is great. I haven't bought probiotics in years because I just eat fermented foods all the time. It will take time. Sometimes it's several days when we're talking about fermenting something like salsa, up to a few weeks when we're talking about maybe sauerkraut, depending on really your taste as far as how tangy and fermented you like your foods. Naturally, it's going to naturally preserve your food. So these are both versions of preservation, but one is using all of that wild good bacteria in order to do that with the salt. It's also going to develop a deep, tangy flavor. So if you're not used to fermented foods, it might be helpful to find a baseline. So if most places in the United States have a brand called Bubby's, and I feel like they're a really good, trustworthy brand for baseline. Like if you're just trying to get used to fermented foods and don't know if your fermented food tastes like normal fermented food, Bubby's has sauerkraut, a spicy sauerkraut, and they've got relish, all kinds of things. They're a great brand to start with, and it's very mild. It's not overpowering. So if you want like a good baseline to just start developing your palate, that would be a good brand. But we'll chat more about making our own. So again, both of these have a place in your kitchen. Canning has a place in your kitchen. They just have different pros and cons. Next. Now, I also want to take a moment to chat about different ferments. So obviously we already chatted about lacto-fermented veggies. It's made with salt and vegetables. It's going to be fermented by lactic acid bacteria. It's an anaerobic process, which means there is no oxygen. It's fully submerged. There should be no oxygen available to vegetables. That's going to help the preservation. This is things like sauerkraut, pickles, kimchi, and the like. It's good to have an array of different ferments in your kitchen though, because there's going to be different types of good bacteria available. Like kombucha, it does have some lactobacillus bacteria, which is great, but it also is going to have yeast and quite a few other different bacteria that are great for your body's consumption and overall gut health. But it is an aerobic fermentation, so it does need airflow in order to ferment. It's great to consume, but it's a little bit different in that it does take in air versus no air at all. And then fermenting sodas are really fun to make as well. I did bring one with me today. This is berry, ginger, and lemon, and it starts as a aerobic, so it starts with oxygen and then it becomes anaerobic. So there's a two-part phase there where it starts with allowing wild yeast to collect from the air, and then you're gonna cap it and so that it can ferment without any oxygen to make it naturally carbonated. Now, when it comes to making our ferments today, there's two different things that we need to chat about. There's dry salting versus brining, and this is not a good versus bad. This is depending on what type of vegetables you're going to use is going to change which one you're going to use, which method you're going to use. Dry salting is for finely sliced or shredded vegetables. Salt is then mixed in directly to the vegetables, and that will draw out all of the juices that are already there and create its own brine. So you're just veggies, salt, and the liquid draws out, and then you'll have enough liquid to keep everything below the brine. As the vegetables are massaged or packed in, they're going to release enough liquid to submerge themselves, allowing themselves to be fermented naturally without adding any extra liquid, any extra water. Sauerkraut obviously is the classic example of this, but we're also going to be fermenting some shredded carrots today, and I'll show you how that works. Brining is just when you add salt and water to the vegetables in order to make sure that it is below the correct water line. So this is best used for whole vegetables, larger pieces like sticks or chunks, you think carrot sticks. And instead of drawing out the natural juices, a saltwater brine is made separately and then poured over the vegetables. This is going to ensure everything stays fully submerged. Again, everything below the line, everything below the brine is fine, creating that natural right environment for your fermentation to begin without any spoiling. Dill pickles would be a classic example of this. Yeah, and then of course I like to ferment carrot sticks as well, and so that's another way that I use the brining method. All right, now one of the things that we were chatting about before beginning this is just making sure that people feel safe and that it's really approachable to do this. I get questions all the time of like, are you sure that's safe to eat? Like, we're such a culture that just puts things in the fridge, puts things in the freezer, and here we are, we're preparing a food and we're leaving it on the counter for a few days in order to get that right environment. And so let's chat about what would make it obvious to eat or not. And so healthy ferments, they're gonna smell sour, but still fresh. But a spoiled ferment, it's gonna smell rotten and off. Like, one of the nice things about fermenting foods, like I love canning, but if a can has botulism in it, which is super rare, like that would likely not happen if you follow all the steps and have clean equipment. But it's hard to tell. When it comes to fermenting, if something goes off, if something is not right, the salt ratio is not correct, you will know. It will be so obvious. Yeah, you will know. It'll be foul. So normal and safe to eat would be tangy. It will smell sour, but like pickles, not off-putting. Bubbles and fizz, not just normal, but like you should see those things. That means the fermentation is active. You'll notice in this one, the brine is actually cloudy. This picture here on the side, that is also a good sign. A lot of times it'll be cloudy, and then eventually the cloudiness will kind of settle to the bottom. And then if you stir it in, it'll be cloudy again, totally normal. That's a good sign. Occasionally, if your salt ratio is too low, if your temperature is too high, or if there's too much headspace on the top of the jar, you can get a white film on the top called comm yeast. That's not dangerous. You can just scrape it off. That's fine. If it's just a little bit of like a white film. It won't be fuzzy. It won't be dark. You shouldn't have yeast inside of these because they shouldn't be able to have any oxygen. And so that's kind of what can lead to this, having that too much headspace, and especially not having enough salt. So it allows other bacteria to grow instead of the lactobacillus bacteria that we're trying to grow. But again, it's not dangerous. It's more of like a yellow light than a red light. If you're thinking about like green light, red light, yellow light. Yeah, if it really scares you, you can toss it, feed it to your chickens or your pigs. That's great, but it's not dangerous. Those are all signs that your ferment is doing well and working. Things that would be not safe that I would just discard would be fuzzy mold that's blue, green, black, or pink. You don't want to consume those. So again, it will be very obvious if your lacto-ferment is not good to eat. You'll notice it, it'll smell off-putting, and it'll look moldy. So it'll have kind of a rotten smell, maybe a slimy texture, or if you look at it and it's been fermenting for a while and all of a sudden you see, oh, the vegetables are exposed above the brine, I would definitely watch it, if there's mold on those. If you catch it early enough, then, just shove them back below the brine. If it's 24 hours from when they were below the brine and they, get to the surface, just shove them back down with your tamper. That's fine. It's really if the vegetables start getting, living there long-term and getting moldy. So this is so figure outable. Like this is so, don't be intimidated and don't overthink this. It is, if it looks good and it tastes good, it is good. If it looks bad and it tastes bad, then it is bad. It's pretty simple. So don't be intimidated, don't overthink, and just use your common sense here, which is great. All right. So as far as our fermentation rules, there's really 8 of them to live by. These are the first 4. We're gonna not overfill our jar. We need our ferments to be active and bubbly and leave space so that they don't overflow. Now, that being said, I often will put a pan or like a glass jar with like an inch or 2, or a glass base with an inch or 2 space in case my ferments do overflow. As the carbon dioxide is released inside of your ferment, it will expand the vegetables. So when that happens, it's nice to have something to catch that liquid. Don't underfill. This is more important than not overfilling because you don't want too much headspace. Again, too much headspace can lead to oxygen and risk of spoilage, and even that comm yeast that we were talking about. And then you're also going to want to weigh it down. Vegetables that can float from the gas buildup will just expose it to more bad bacteria. So you want to keep it below that by using a weight. I did invest in some, but they're like 9 to 10 bucks on Amazon, like so cheap. Yeah, just I've used different things in the past and they're worth the 10 bucks that they are on Amazon. So Mason Tops has a great set of little glass weights for fermentation and they are easy to use. You're also going to want to limit the oxygen and use an air lock lid. You can use a regular mason jar lid if you are the type that can remember every day. I, however, like a little wiggle room if I forget about it on my shelf somewhere, that it will be releasing the gases without me burping it. And so I like to use, again, the Mason Tops. They've got a really simple one. It's easy to wash and it is not complicated. It's also worth the investment. So moving on to number 5 in our fermentation rules, venting the jar, talking about that lid. I like to have the one that vents itself so I don't have to think about it. Of course, give it time. Fermentation is a natural process and you're not going to rush good bacteria. So, you know, if you're fermenting things like a salsa, that's going to be like 5 days. But if you're fermenting something that's a little bit more hardy, like a cabbage, that can be like 2 weeks. You're going to need to give it time. And after a few days, when you're testing this out, you can actually open up your ferment and take a bite. You know, don't put that fork back in because you don't want to put any bad bacteria into your ferment, but take a tester bite and just see how is it doing. If it's too salty, it needs more time. You're also going to want to mind the temperature. Ferments do best with 60 to 70 degrees. If your house is warmer than that, it's best to find a cooler area in your house or maybe below your house if you've got a basement, but they really need that 60 to 70 degree range. The cooler it is, the slower and better flavor. The warmer, the faster and riskier is the ferment. And then of course, when you're done, you're going to want to refrigerate when it's ready. When the fermentation, when you want to slow it down, you're going to put it in the refrigerator or cold storage. Anything between 34 degrees and 55 degrees counts as cold storage. So if you've got a basement that stays within that realm, you don't have to take up fridge space. However, I usually do just put them in my fridge. My husband will often laugh at me during the middle of harvest season when I've got 12 jars of fermented pickles, but you know what? They're great. So worth the fridge space for me. All right, let's chat about salt ratios because this is one of the most important things. Again, it's really simple. We just need vegetables, salt, and liquid, but the salt is really one of the key elements here. You're really going to want to keep it between 2 and 5%. 2 and 3% is going to be a faster, milder flavor, and 4 to 5% is going to be a slower ferment with a longer preservation period. When we're talking about using less salt or more salt, often what you're preparing is going to dictate that. So vegetables that are firmer, vegetables with lower water content, and that are naturally hardier, such as carrots, beets, garlic, cauliflower, broccoli, green beans, cabbage, sauerkraut. Those are all things that are going to need a little bit lower salt ratio. I like to use 3% in my sauerkraut, but then for other vegetables that are softer, that are prone to softening or molding, you're going to want to keep your salt ratio higher, between that 4 and 5%. Things like pickles, squash, peppers will want to be in that 4 to 5%. When it comes to supplies, the nice thing about fermenting is you can get away with purchasing almost no supplies. You will need mason jars. I really prefer wide mouth because it's easier to handle as far as pushing down all the vegetables. Really, you're going to need fresh produce. You do not want to start with produce that's been sitting around a long time. So if you've got produce that you're like, oh, I should get through that, and it's been in the fridge a long time and it's starting to soften up, you know, put it in a stew. Don't put it in your ferments because it needs fresh produce in order to ferment well. You're also going to want a high quality salt. I really like Redmond real salt. I've been using it for years, and you don't want anything that's going to be iodized. So no iodized salt here. You want a high quality salt. Along with that, you're also, if you have to add any water, you want to make sure that your water is either filtered, or if you have tap water, there is chlorine in tap water. And so you want that to dissipate. So if you want to ferment, say tomorrow, fill up your water jars and then let them air out. Don't put any lids on them overnight, and all of that will evaporate. But if you start with tap water that's chlorinated, it will kill off all that good bacteria that you're trying to grow. Or you can just filter your water too. So, of course, the airlock vent, it's not necessary, but it sure is helpful, especially if you're forgetful like me. It's just nice to have that little cushion so you don't have to worry about burping those jars every day. If you don't have a way for those gases to release, they can explode. I've never had that happen. I've had that happen to friends. But again, I like the ones that vent themselves so that I don't have to worry about that. Again, fermenting weights, super helpful. Not necessary. You can get away with other options. When I first started fermenting, I grabbed some rocks and put them in a Ziploc bag. I later realized I probably was, exposing myself to microplastics. I don't do that anymore. But, you can get creative, put a smaller jar in a bigger jar to keep all the stuff below the brine. Or you can spend the $10 on fermenting weights and save yourself the headache of trying to figure that out. And then lastly, a pickle packer. This is also, I went years without ever using this and just shoving it down with spatulas in my hands, as far as like trying to make sure that everything was packed down into the jar. But it sure has been helpful to have one of these as well. One of my favorite brands, Mason Tops, they actually, this isn't sponsored or anything. Mason Tops has a kit that has all of those. So it has the vents, the pickle packer, and the fermenting weights in a really reasonably priced kit, like all together. And honestly, that's probably been one of the best investments in my supplies. But really, you can get away with using very minimal things here. You don't need a big canner. You don't need a pressure canner to preserve this way. It's very simple.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to move into chatting about the 3 different ways, if we've got time for it.
We have about 20 minutes.
20 minutes? Okay, maybe we can squeeze them in. The very first thing we're going to ferment is carrots. So maybe sauerkraut's not your hat, you don't love it yet. This is very, very simple. So fermented carrots is just 4 cups of shredded carrots and 1 tablespoon of salt. Super simple. And then we're also going to do a sauerkraut recipe. Again, this is very simple. This is just 1 cabbage and then 3% salt of weight. So the total weight when it comes to the vegetable. Now, it's important to note when it comes to, when we talk about percentages, some people will sometimes just measure and sometimes like via tablespoon, they'll measure that way. Some people will measure by percentage. I've found it's pretty forgiving as far as using measurements with like a tablespoon versus measuring with a weight ratio of 3% or 2%, whatever that is. But if you're having troubles, I would say start weighing your salt, because not all salt is the same density level. And that's why some people will preach like you have to weigh your salt. And then other people like me are like, that's probably good. I'll just throw a tablespoon in. Yeah, it's pretty forgiving. But if you need to start troubleshooting, like if you're having troubles with your ferments, I would say start weighing them, because it's probably your salt weight ratio. When we're talking about the percentage of weight, it's going to be the total weight. So if you're dry salting, that's going to be 3% of the total weight of the vegetables. But if you're brining with the water, veggies, and salt, it's going to be the total weight of the water and the veggies together. That's really important to note, because if you just weigh your vegetables and do 3% of that and then add water, your salt ratio is going to be off. Yeah, and then lastly, I want to chat about fermenting one of my favorite food groups, salsa, because if you start fermenting your salsa, your chips and salsa can become a superfood, and who doesn't want that? I mean, if I could figure out how to ferment my chips as well, that would be great. But in the meantime, I'm fermenting my salsa, and so that is what
you want to go over
we're
there?
Going to go today. So we're going to zoom out, and I'll show you just how simple it is. So when it comes to doing our carrot ferment, it really is just as simple as 4 cups of carrots. These are shredded carrots. I do like to do fermented carrot sticks, or even carrot rounds, but this is one of my favorite ways to ferment, and just the texture I find turns out better. And it makes a great top as far as like putting on top of salads or on your hamburgers, or even on your tacos as well. And it's literally just 4 cups of carrots and then 1 tablespoon of salt. When it comes to dry brining like this is going to be a dry brine. You'll see people all over the internet who will take their vegetables, they'll pour their salt over them, and then they will massage it until there's no texture left, almost whatsoever. And I found that's not necessary. I do a lot more low-key, lazy girl way where I mix the salt in and I will just let it sit there, and I'll go and piddle around my kitchen for a little while, and then I come back and the salt will naturally draw out all of the juices that are in there. And so you don't need to massage your carrots or your sauerkraut for the next 20 to 30 minutes to draw out all that liquid and then lose all the good texture of that produce. Just pour the salt over it, let it sit there, and the liquid will come out. So I am going to add some of it into this jar now, but it will have to sit for probably about 30 minutes in order to really pull out all of the liquid that's inside of there. But again,
now, Tawny, I have a question.
Yeah.
So could you just do this and put it in the jar and let the salt sit while it's in the jar? Or do you really want to just keep it in the bowl and let it sit before you put it in the jar?
Both work. I've done both, but as the salt pulls it up, you'll need to grab your tamper and like tamp it down a whole lot more. The vegetable will lose some volume as the liquid pulls out of it. It won't be like super noticeable, but you will notice it's more packable.
So it is really easier to do it in the bowl.
Yeah, to let it sit for, 30 minutes or an hour. I'm usually doing like 12 things in my kitchen at once. And so the lazy girl method of just pouring the salt on and piddling for an hour works a lot better for me. And I find the texture is not so mushy and gross. Like it still has good texture when it's all said and done, instead of pulling all that out. You don't need to massage your sauerkraut for 30 minutes. I don't care what anyone else says on the internet. So that is really as simple as it is for the carrots.
Oh, you got it there.
Okay. This is the tamper, or some people will call it a pickle packer. And you'll just squish it down. Now for this size, before I leave this, I would actually want to do about double that. So I want to make sure that the headspace is up to just about where you'd want it for canning as well. So it should be just below the top, about 1 inch. But just for today, because we're not going to wait another half hour while these liquid juices pull out of there. This is my glass weight, and it's got just the tiniest little lip so that you can grab it. And you're just going to shove it there inside. Eventually, all of the liquid will rise up, and then the weight will keep all of the carrots below. Now, when you have shredded items, sometimes you're going to want to grab either a cabbage leaf or like a full circle ring of onion and put it on top, and then put on your weight, because that will keep all of the small items, all the tiny little pieces of shredded carrot, below the brine. Sometimes like a few of them will rise up. And so putting a cabbage leaf in there before you put on the weight can help just make sure none of them sneak up the side. And yeah, it's that simple. Like if nothing else, just throw some salt over some vegetables and let it sit for a few days. And it's really that easy. Like it's so figure outable. I hope that you start this week. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the salsa. salsa is one of my favorite foods to ferment because it is literally making like your favorite homemade salsa and then just letting it sit on your shelf on, room temperature for the next 5 to 7 days. If your house is warmer, maybe 3 to 5 days. I like to keep my house cool, so I'll let mine sit on the shelf for about 7 days. But as long as you have enough salt in your recipe, which for us today is going to be a tablespoon, then you'll be able to ferment your salsa and turn it into a superfood. So we are going to I've thrown in a whole onion, 7 garlic cloves, and a bunch of cilantro. I'm not going to really measure this because it's not a bunch of volume. For our tomatoes, I'm using 1.5 pounds of tomatoes, 1 bell pepper, and 1 jalapeno.
Do you want me to cut that jalapeno for you?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Totally welcome that. Are you feeling more motivated to do some lacto-fermentation?
I am. Yeah. I mean, I like to can, so this seems just like a natural thing to start doing. And the only thing I've ever tried was sauerkraut.
Okay. Yeah, salsa it's an easy gateway into fermenting because literally just your favorite salsa recipe. Make sure you got enough salt. You can weigh it if you're unsure about your recipe. The one that is available on these slides, it's already taken into account the how much produce we're putting in. So
just throw the whole thing in there?
Yeah, just throw the whole thing in there.
Okay.
If you want it mild, you could do half jalapeno, but I like
or you could leave the seeds in and just really kick it up. Right?
Yeah. That's usually my MO.
Okay.
Now you can put this and your sauerkraut and some fermented carrots and really power pack your tacos on the next Taco Tuesday.
Yeah, we just had a Cinco de Mayo yesterday and had salsa.
Oh man,
I know we should have had this
next year.
So as normally we do questions at the end, but while you're cutting,
Yeah,
I'm going to ask you a couple questions that I saw in the chat. The first one is on ferments where you have spices in there. What do you do if the spices are floating on the top? Is that okay? Or does that need to be under it too?
I would say under, but if you take something, if you have another, even if you had like a tomato, like if the cilantro was rising up, if you have a tomato round, you can then, that's wider than, your weight, then that can kind of help push it all down too.
Kind of like a leaf of the cabbage to kind of put as a cap over to help.
Yes.
Okay. And if you saw something floating, could you just like take it out? If you just noticed it that day, just kind of spoon it out and toss it.
I totally have given up when there's something, if I keep pushing it down and it keeps rising up and there's only a couple of them, I'll just take out those few.
Okay.
Eventually the density of it will usually sink below anyways. But if there's one, a few spots that are being, problems, I'll just remove them. I do want to say, I will often hear people, kind of one of the old folk way of doing it was just instead of using a fermentation weight, they would just take a cabbage leaf like for their sauerkraut and put that on top as their fermentation weight. But then it defeats the purpose, because then the cabbage leaf is exposed above the brine and is not going to be below. And so again, you're adding opportunities for bad bacterial growth, which I would not suggest doing that. That is how people often do it. But I would not recommend it. So for my salsa, I don't want it too blended. I'm just going to pulse it a few times. So bear with me for the noise. You got a little tamper thing for it or no? Oh, there it goes. There you go.
Is it going?
It is going, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you need this right here. Beautiful. Thank you. All right. So I am just going to add my tablespoon of salt, and then we're going to put it in a jar and let it sit at room temperature for 5 to 7 days. And then I have my own probiotic. I don't have to buy it at the store. I don't have to drop 40 bucks on it. I can just eat chips and salsa and call it a day. Oh, that is upside down.
That's okay.
It's here for comedic relief as well. Beautiful. So
now, if you wanted to add cumin or oregano or dry spices, could you add it at this stage?
yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Is it better to, or
Yeah.
is there any pros or cons, like let it sit for 5 days and then add it before you put it in the
No,
refrigerator?
I would add it now. In fact, the recipe I have that I shared with you guys does have cumin in it. I just didn't bring any with me today. But I would add it now, because the longer all of the spices and juices sit together, the better tasting it's going to be. I mean, homemade salsa is always better 24 hours later than when you make it, because it allows all those yummy spices and juices to sit together. Yeah, and then I also would normally add lime in here as well. But other than that, you just put it in your jar and let it sit there and ferment.
Okay.
Yeah. What other questions do you guys have?
What if somebody is on a well? Like we talked about, city water, tap water. What about well water? Do you have to filter that, or?
Yeah. That's probably hit and miss. So if you've tested your well water and you know that maybe there's some bad signs there, then yeah, I would recommend filtering it. I use my well water, but I'm a little bit of a old soul, and I kind of just
rebel.
I'm a bit of a rebel. I'm like, you know what? Well water is great. I just, yeah. So
the lacto-fermentation rebel.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Awesome. I am going to need your help getting this puppy off and dumping her in, because I've not used this one before.
For sure. Yeah, there's a lot in there too, so it may kind of. Here, let me hand that to you.
Yeah.
And let me just move this out of the way.
Perfect. I got a lot of skills in life, but being a clean cook is not usually one of them. So I've never thought about starting my cooking a show for that reason.
Is that, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So don't judge the messiness. That's just part of it. And then I got just a smidge too much, but that's okay. I'll put it in here. So this is too much for the headspace.
Because you want it, like you said, like you're canning, right?
Right.
In knowing that it still might, even with your top on there, it still might go over.
Exactly. So these are the one-way valves that I was talking about that I love. I've had a few different lid locks over the years, and this is by far the simplest one. It's silicone. It lets all of the carbon dioxide out without letting any oxygen back in, and it's very washable. I don't have to worry about multiple pieces. Some of them can be a pain. I get the wide mouth because I like wide mouth jars. And so we're just going to take our fermentation weight, push it down. The juices will all be above. You can see that from where you're at.
So Melody commented and she said, messy cooks are real cooks. I'd watch.
Thanks, Melody. Giving me a boost of confidence, because that is the only way I cook. Clean up later. Fun's happening. And then that's it. So
awesome.
Again, sometimes I have used just a basic lid for these and burp them, but again, not my preferred. If you want to get started before your valves come in the mail, you could always start that way. But
you see this one I have?
So foolproof. Yeah.
Has a thing on there. I don't know if you've seen those.
This is another great one by Ball. I'll get a little closer so you can see it. Gonna totally mess you up though. So this is has a little one-way valve in there, and then you can just pop those out and wash them as well. But yeah, then this is 2 pieces versus 1 piece, you know, however, I guess this is technically 2 pieces as well. Both great options. As long as there's no oxygen getting in, then it'll be healthy and good. Yeah, what other
All
questions you
right.
got?
Let's see, we can transition over to sauerkraut. You think we
Oh,
have
sure.
about
We got
15
time?
minutes?
Sure.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
let me help you clean up. And while we do that, just a question. Do you recommend any cookbooks like that?
Ooh.
It's not really a cookbook, but maybe like a good basic lacto-fermentation book that'll go over everything.
Yeah, great question. You know, I have personally not bought any, or even rented any. I found most of mine on the internet over the years, and most of them are all the same. You know, the ratio is always going to be about the same. The time's going to always be about the same because the science is always the same, right? Your salt ratio to your vegetable, it's all going to be similar. And so I'm sure there's lots of great ones out there. I don't personally have any.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of the internet, right?
That's the beauty of the internet. Learn
or make your
anything.
own stuff with what you have
Yeah.
in your garden.
The University of YouTube. That's
Right.
That's my MO. So when it comes to cabbage, there is going to be a heart in the middle that you're going to want to, that's going to cut out. It's going to be bitter.
You're going to want another bowl, huh?
The white one's great. That'll be great.
That one's fine?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So where the stem grows,
The white one.
it'll just be, this part here is a little bit more bitter. So you're going to want to cut this, like the stem portion out. I usually just cut out that little triangular piece and toss it often to my chickens or goats or pigs, but today will be the trash can. For sauerkraut, again, you do not have to massage all the good texture out of it like most people on the internet will tell you. Just throw it in the bowl and let the salt do the work. But you are going to want to, you know, you can do it however you prefer. I prefer to have a thin slice, like smaller than an eighth of an inch wide in diameter when I'm slicing my cabbage. I prefer to try to do this up front so that I don't have to worry about tons of chopping later. When I'm first cutting into it, just try to make sure you do real thin slices so that it has the best texture, I think. I usually don't do my sauerkraut in a food processor. Third time's a charm. I just slice it thinly and throw it in and allow the salt to do the job.
Well, they didn't have food processors back in the day. So
I know. That's a new thing.
Now, purple cabbage, green cabbage, can you use Napa cabbage or bok choy? Like, is it whatever you want?
It's all the same. Yeah, you can use whatever you want. I love purple cabbage. For today, we're just going to do cabbage and salt and keep it really simple. I always like a little spice in my life, so I often will put like 1 jalapeno per jar of cabbage that I'm fermenting, and I just like a little hot kraut. But of course, if you're not into spicy, then that's fine too.
So I told you I've tried sauerkraut twice. The first time I did it with the whey. And it was out of the Nourishing Traditions cookbook.
Okay.
Sally Fallon Morrell, I think somebody on here will correct me, I'm sure. But we use whey from yogurt and then salt and then rice seed.
Okay. How was it?
It was good, but like I was telling you, you need to convert me because it's my experience. Mine turns out squeaky.
Yeah. Yeah. So for squeaky sauerkraut, I would recommend, 1, not massaging your sauerkraut.
Okay.
Don't massage your cabbage. Just let the salt.
Yeah, and I massaged it for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. I know. And that's what literally what everyone does. And then the reason I found this out is actually we have a place in town that makes the best sauerkraut I've ever had in my life. And I finally hunted down one of the employees and I said, tell me, do you massage your cabbage? I know you probably don't. And she goes, no, we don't even have time. And I was like, I knew it. I knew you didn't massage it because it loses all the texture. So try not massaging it, just salting. And then also maybe salt just a little bit higher. So try salting at like a 3%. And I would measure. Like if you need troubleshooting, start weighing. Sorry,
Okay.
not measuring, weighing. Yeah.
That's a really good idea.
Because yes, we don't want squeaky sauerkraut.
So let me see, what other questions do I have here? If like, what would you recommend to be the first thing? Was that the carrots?
Man, maybe salsa. Maybe
Salsa?
Salsa's probably, it will convert you to wanting lacto-fermented foods. Like if I'm a big believer in not cutting out food groups, just making them healthier. And if I can make my tacos into a superfood and feel good about that, I'm all about that.
Anything to
I
make
mean,
tacos
anything
like
to eat tacos and be like, this is a health food now. Like that's
taco justification recipe.
100%. Just throw some fermented foods on top, and now it's a health food. So I think, yeah, if you already like making homemade salsa, I would start there. But I feel like carrots is really mild, especially if you have kids. Carrots are a little bit sweeter than cabbage. They smell better after they're fermented than cabbage. Cabbage kind of has a little bit of a, it's just a little bit more aggressive smell, and not everyone's into it. So if you're trying to get young kids to start eating fermented foods, salsa, if they like, I mean, my kids love spicy salsa. So if they like that, salsa's great. Otherwise, carrots is another great one because it's very mild. It's a little bit sweeter, and you can just start with really small portions of that. You know, one thing that you should note, like if your body's not used to having good probiotics inside of it, you might experience some bloat at first, but long term, you will actually have less bloat usually. So that's kind of normal. Maybe start out, if you're not used to having good probiotics, start out with just like a tablespoon at a meal.
Okay.
And that's pretty reasonable and approachable for most people.
So Rachel asked, she says, I've struggled with beets and carrots, now attempting for a third time. It keeps growing the white-green fuzz on top. Any ideas on troubleshooting? Now, I know Rachel, I know she's an experienced fermenter and canner. And this has been something she talked about with me that she was kind of stumped.
Yeah.
Any ideas?
Yeah. You know what? I would be curious about what she's using for water, because chlorinated water will kill off the good bacteria and allow the bad bacteria to thrive. So I'd start with the water. If she's pretty confident that her salt ratio is already within that 2 to 5% window. Now, I'm a very type C person. I seldom follow a recipe, but when it comes to that salt ratio, that's law.
Yeah, she said filtered well water.
Okay,
so maybe it's a salt.
Yeah, maybe it's the salt ratio.
Maybe.
Also, you know, if she's been around the block with this, she's probably using a good salt, I would imagine. But making sure it's not iodized salt, and then making sure it's the correct salt ratio.
She's using Redmond's.
Okay, yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's on it. She already knows.
She is. That's what I said. I know her. I know she's like pretty. And she says she weighs the salt by grams.
Weighs the salt in grams. Okay. Man, I've never had someone who's checked all those boxes, and it's not the comm yeast.
She says it has the white with the green.
White with the green.
Interesting.
Man, I almost want you to send me some pictures.
Rachel knows she knows how to get a hold of me.
Perfect.
She's like, I'm stumped too. She totally will. So Annie said she had to step away to do her sourdough stretch and folds. That's important. So she missed. How long will sauerkraut last in the fridge?
Yeah, if it's in the fridge temperature, I've kept it in there for like 8 months and it's been fine.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, 6 to 12 months, it does not stop the fermentation process. So some people will say, yeah, and then you put it in the fridge and it stops the fermentation process. It just slows it down drastically. So, yeah, it will still continue to ferment, but at a very, very slow rate. And so it'll just get tangier. And as long as it still smells fine and tastes fine, the tang will be more powerful. But if it's not off-putting, then it's probably still fine. That is such a nice thing about fermenting foods. Like, visually and taste buds, like if it's good, it's good, and if it's off, it's off. Like, you'll know.
And you could do carrot, like match sticks or carrot sticks instead of shredded.
Yeah. Now, if you want more crispy texture.
I wonder if Rachel, I believe you're doing beets and carrots in the same ferment. Yeah, she is. Could that have something to do with it? Just those two vegetables?
No, as long as they're clean, it's good water, it's good salt, and the salt ratio is on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
We'll get pictures.
Yeah.
We'll update
chat some more.
We'll update the VIP, because all of this, so just so everyone knows, the Tawny's presentation, a recording of this video, and all the resources will be in our VIP vault. So all the VIP members will be able to go back and access that resource. So if we find a solution to the problem, we will add it in there.
There you go.
But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. We only have like 4 minutes left.
Okay.
So at this point, are you just adding salt and letting it sit like the carrots?
Yeah, literally just going to add the salt and then leave it for 30 minutes to an hour before I pack it. It will release all the juices, so the brine will be enough. In the event that it ever wasn't, I've never had cabbage not have enough liquid. So sometimes people will want to top it off, but I've always found that if you leave cabbage long enough with the correct amount of salt, enough liquid will pull out. Then you can always add a little bit of liquid, and just make sure that you're still staying in that like 3% ratio for sauerkraut.
So if you're saying if your liquid doesn't come up over and you need to add
just
more,
just like top it off a smidge.
And how long are we keeping this on the counter before we put it in the refrigerator?
Sauerkraut, I like to keep for a few weeks. Like, I'll keep it on my counter for 4 weeks.
Okay.
But again, it will expand. So even when you keep it underneath the headspace, it will still expand. So put it on your counter, but then put a dish underneath it so it catches any of that liquid, if it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts?
No, just fail forward. If you've never done this, keep trying, and eventually you will figure it out. Like, it is figure outable. I feel like if people before Google could figure this out, then we can figure it out with Google. So
tell us about the Mountain Mama, where everyone can find you, what you sell.
Yeah.
Pitch it.
I'm better at selling Lacto-Fermentation now. So you can find me on Instagram, is primarily where I'm at. I document things about my homestead and homeschooling and homemaking and hunting there. You can see my really adorable, cute baby goats. They are a hoot and a holler that we got right now, and they are a joy to watch. So go check them out. They're really the stars of the show, is my baby goats. And then I also sell my own skincare because I read too many ingredients. And so I sell a tallow-based skincare line. If you want to check that out as well, you can find that in my Instagram bio. So if that's something for you. Yeah.
All right. And real quick, let's tell them about your new venture, your Joyful Club.
Oh, yeah. So separate from homesteading, I felt pretty convicted quite a few years ago and finally was obedient to launch a business. It's called Joyful Collective, but full is 2 L's, couldn't spell it correctly, where I help women find biblical joy. And so just journeying with women through what that looks like, because life happens and we all face grief and heartaches and hardships, and we've all had our own version of hards. And so learning to find biblical joy is it's necessary for sanity, and it's available. Like, it's available no matter what you've been through. And that's my heart for women, is to be able to cultivate that in their life. And so I launched that as well. You can find my Instagram handle is joy.full.collective, if that's for you as well.
And there's tons of great goat content.
You know what?
on
They
there
are
as well.
Yeah, what's more joyful than baby goats running
Right,
around?
right.
I mean, they have to be on there.
So I hope you enjoyed this this month's National Virtual Gathering. You're going to see Tawny in a completely different light in September. She's going to be back with us, teaching us about women and hunting.
Yes, I cannot wait.
This is her passion. So anyway, you guys, thank you so much. We will be back June 3rd. Marion Newsom Banks will be here to talk about fruit tree guilds. Now, the first time I heard that term, I thought it was like a group of ladies that just totally dug their fruit trees and wanted to have like a little club. That's not what it's about. It's actually about trying to learning how to put like certain plants and stuff in the area under your tree to support the soil health and the tree growth and the fruit production. So be sure to join us for our June 3rd National Virtual Gathering right here. This NVG will be posted to our YouTube channel in 2 weeks. And thanks everyone for joining. And we look forward to seeing you next month. And again, back in September to learn all about hunting.
Yay. I can't wait.
All right.
It's going to be amazing. Yes, thank you.
That was good.
This was so fun.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
Done.
Woo.
Yay!